French kissing my husband?
He pushed me away after like 5 or 6 seconds. And I'm sure the only reason he was moving his tongue around was because he was trying to say something.
That's enough, Karen. I get it.
Sorry.
Karen told me that you French kissed her on New Year's Eve.
What? I did not. I can't believe it. You're actually accusing me of this?
Why would Karen lie?
Why would I lie?
It wouldn't be such a big deal if you would just admit it.
What possible reason would I have to kiss Karen?
You're a man.
What is that supposed to mean?
You have been with the same woman all these years. It's only natural to be a little curious.
About what?
You mean to tell me after all these years of marriage you've never even so much as thought about another woman?
What are you talking about?
If you are just going to be ridiculous, there is no point in carrying on this conversation. But you are on notice. Why don't you kiss it?
Are you...
For anybody in the audience, we're going to be talking about Perrin and Faile today. It makes sense.
Still obsessing about that?
I want a straight answer out of you.
I swear, from the moment I laid eyes on you, you were the only woman in the world for me.
So you mean to tell me that unlike any other man alive, you don't even have a glancing interest for other women? You and you alone stand outside the dictates of millions of years of evolution.
Why is that so hard for you to believe?
Because I look at other men, not seriously, and I would never do anything about it, but God, hell, I notice. And if you don't, it means that you love me more than I love you.
Of course I love you more.
And you're okay with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about it. If you loved me as much as I loved you, we'd never leave the bedroom. Nothing would get done.
I love you.
Is Lois here? Oh my God, are you Lois's husband?
Huh?
So, who is married to the bald guy with the earring?
That's Donna.
There's so much perfect in that scene. All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samu?
Well, we're back on our comparing Nanbo and Jonathan to Perrin and Faile, but we got more comparisons with Wheel of Time. And it's basically another one of those episodes where we're talking about good literature versus modern screenwriting, which actually, realistically, it was a good show. If we can nitpick at a good show, that's always a fun time. But hopefully we touch on some things. I'm going to bring the psychological edge to it, and you're going to bring the theatrical edge to it, and hopefully you enjoy it.
Yeah, I've mentioned before one of my favorite shows was Stargate, both SG-1 and Atlantis, and both shows had good endings, but the series itself was way better than the ending. The ending was fine. But they weren't quite as satisfying as you would hope for. But it was an ending. But I am going to rant about my most hated scene in season 5. Of all the things that I have heard people complaining about,
the mystery goo scene.
The mystery goo scene. And I'll tell you why. All right, you have things like, all right, the final climactic battle was way too short. All right, yeah, but ultimately this show wasn't about the battles and the fights. Even the final scene fighting the Demigorgon in the end of season 1 wasn't that long, and it was kind of over in a snap when Elle shows up and just vaporizes it, right? So ultimately it's about the characters, and it's not an accident that it opens with these middle school kids playing D&D. And as we've ranted about when we've been talking about this, that when the show is good, it's because it carries that theme through the whole series. The whole point of the archetypal D&D characters is that they all bring something different to the party.
Mm-hmm.
They all have weaknesses, but they all have their own strengths, and those strengths and weaknesses complement each other so that you have a strong, cohesive team. Okay, you're in football, your big guys are on the line, your fast guys are on the outside, your guy that can dissect things is in the middle, in the back, usually your middle linebacker on defense or your quarterback on offense, okay? None of those people can play every position. They don't need to because they have each other. They work together. And where the series falls apart is when it forgets that. And I think that's why the goop scene ticks me off so much, because we kind of set this up last time with how Nambo and Jonathan complement each other. That and they could have had a very non-traditional, different kind of relationship because she's the one who takes charge. She's much more assertive. She's much more aggressive. She's much more extroverted. She's much more popular. She's much more social. But in private, it's, hey, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Nancy, but I grew, you were the popular kid in school. I went to the school of hard knocks. Let me tell you how the real world works. And so if you want to do the things you want to do, you've got to figure out, I'm not telling you you can't do it. I'm saying you've got to figure out how to do it within the confines of the real world. And the real world kind of sucks and it's full of jerks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and there's a big, and this is a modern thing. This is why we're comparing modern writing to previous pre-modern writing. I'm going to say 20 years ago and before, with the shift in culture. There's a bit of narcissism with that. I've brought up the they debated in the DSM-5 to include narcissism because it's become more of a norm, and that actually has some validity because I'm going to read to you from the DSM-5 TR, page 734 for those referencing any personality disorder, and we're talking general personality disorders right now, not just like ADHD or anything. Personality disorders are different than affective disorders. An enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectations of the individual's culture. This pattern is manifested in two or more of the following areas: cognition, affect, which is how it comes out, how your personality comes out and is shown; interpersonal functioning, so how you deal with other people; and impulse control, so how you are able to react to the environment around you. But what we have actually is a culture where narcissism is encouraged, especially since the advent of social media. And for those in the audience, they say, "Oh, you come down on women harder than men. You come down on the left harder than the right, or whatever." Peterson talks about the left-right dichotomy as it's obvious when the right goes wrong. It's very obvious, and it's much, much harder to parse out when the left goes wrong. Same with men and women. So that's why it's a much more interesting topic. We are more aggressive. We are more physically imposing. Our impulses can shed towards violence on average, right? So yeah, there are Machiavellian men, but at the same time, on average, the male who loses control is going to be violent. Our prison system reflects that. 90 something percent male, right? Yep. So our prison system reflects that. Our laws reflect that. So how do we parse out when women kind of cross that line? And it usually goes on this curve of using society to create advantage. And so, yeah, what happens when the culture actually becomes the norm for that to happen? We've been doing it since the dawn of man, women and children first. Do you even blame women for this, right? Women and children first. Oh, happy wife, happy life. All of these tropes that are actually valid, right?
But what happiness used to mean is not what it means now, which is the problem.
Yeah, and the problem is with Western culture, just like with everything. I have trouble out in the heat, and I live in Houston, Texas, which sucks. I have trouble in the heat and humidity because I not grew up, but I have lived for a long time in the comfort of air conditioning, right? Same thing with culture. If you are in the comfort of make women happy, birth control took away the risk that used to come with sexual, we'll say looseness is just a general term. The advent of modern medicine has created weakness in all of us, realistically, because we can just go to the doctor and get treated for whatever. So yeah, if females tend towards that in general, because protection of myself is actually ingrained in their biology. That's why I have physiology of behavior right behind me here, because there's a lot of risk in everything they do. And you can lose half your males in a village and the village still survive. You lose half the females in a village, that's a tribe that's gone.
Yeah.
That's a tribe that's gone. That's why raiding parties would steal the women of the other side. Again, you want patriarchy, let's go back to the wild, right? It's their value is held higher, and then we get modern society where we take all the risk out of their value. Do you even blame women? And now we have a modern culture where the writing reflects that.
And it could have been something more because we played that we opening, hopefully, unless we get copyright struck and it disappears and you have no idea what we're talking about. But we played that hilarious scene from,
Yeah, just go ahead and paraphrase it real quick, just
yeah,
in case we have to
from
cut it.
Malcolm in the Middle, of some woman telling the wife that your French kissed your husband on New Year's Eve, and she's freaking out, and he's going, and you believe her? Why would she lie? Why would I lie? Okay. It hilariously, because the show's funny and because what's his face, brain farting on the actor's name, he's so freaking good. To
Oh,
go from that and then to go to Breaking Bad is just incredible. But uh
I'm blanking too. Hold on.
it so perfectly encapsulates the Perrin Faile Bearlane dynamic, where Perrin is so often just sitting there going, why? And it gets
Bryan
worse.
Cranston.
Cranston, there you go. Thank you. It gets worse when you get scenes from Faile's point of view, and she knows. But to her credit, she kind of understands. She kind of understands this is a bit of a flaw for her, and it dawned on me that when I was thinking about the similarities and differences between Jonathan and Nambo and Steve the Hare, and then what we have in Wheel of Time, is in Faile's defense, I don't think we ever see this, and Isomorphic Scott, Jason, anyone out there who's read and reread Wheel of Time, if you can think of an instance where this happened, I can't. But it makes sense to me that Faile would have seen women like Bearlane before, because she grew up in a court. She grew up around strong, smart, manipulative women who undoubtedly would have used sex as a weapon.
Which, I mean, she used. I'm gonna specify here with Bearlane because we do get inside her head at some point. She used sexuality as a weapon. We do know from her own personal point of view that she was not as loose as she let on.
I believe she tells Perrin at one point, despite what you may have heard, you'll only be my third or something like that. So
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
it is. She teases. She is,
which is more dangerous. Which
yes,
is way more dangerous.
As I've said before, strippers are hot used car salesmen.
I already used that
Okay.
meme though.
Yeah, I know, but that's what she's doing. She that is a better way to phrase it, because she's not using sex explicitly as a weapon. She's using her sexuality as a weapon.
Well, I mean, we have data. Look, I mean, Sophie Rain on OnlyFans makes more than 4 top paid athletes combined.
Wow.
I think her net worth was like her yearly income. The when they brought this up was like 42 million.
Holy shnikes.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong business. Okay. Anywho, um,
Hey, we don't have boobs big enough, dude. Oh, you might. I don't know.
but but also she explicitly tells Faile in the stone, I'm going to take him, because that's where Bearlane is very masculine, is I'm going to win.
hmm
I'm going to defeat you. I'm going to conquer. So she knows, however much she trusts Perrin, she knows she absolutely cannot trust Bearlane. And
Well, and that's actually a flag too, because we're very weak to the aggressive woman. That like turns us on, right? You know, we look for the person we can protect, but if in private they kind of get that, "Oh," you know,
well,
that is the thing that's going to get you going, right?
we've said before, ladies, if you really want to uh if you really want to give your man a boost, you just make him feel like you want him.
Well, and in everyday little things too. I think
Mhm.
Williamson called it good boy points. We love the good boy points. It's not
Mhm.
the grand gestures are great and all, but when we get those little everyday good boy points, we're your freaking golden retriever, okay?
Yeah,
And give
the
me
the
that
golden
pickle jar, I'll open it. Yeah, it's
the dog wants to go play fetch, wants to go for a walk, but you know what? Is also very happy just getting his ear scratched and
mhm.
hearing good boy. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But back to the difference though, of course, with in Stranger Things is that Jonathan is the one who is insecure and jealous. It's the man who's insecure and jealous. And if you look at Nancy's character through the series, he doesn't really have a reason to be. She's not the type of person who's going to do this. She's not the type of person who's going to be going around behind his back.
I'm going to defend him against that statement because of the end of season 1, where he did everything right, and then she still went back to Steve. And they just
Okay, that's a fair
basically,
point.
yeah, and they basically just bought him off with a present that was very thoughtful. But it was, I mean, as a guy, it would be a little bit of a smack in the face to be like, yeah, but you're still with him. I appreciate the thought in the present, but
Hmm.
you're still with the guy that was treating you badly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
train of thought. Where'd it come? Okay.
That she did nothing. She's not the kind of
Hmm.
person that should cause that insecurity. And I just said, well, there was a big moment that should. So that's where you were at.
Right. Since then, since all they've gone through, but oh, I remember. Yeah, I was going to defend Jonathan as well, but from a different point of view, which is remember that Steve the Hare is on the same level with Nambo.
Mm.
They both grew up in the fancy side of town. He drives a freaking Beamer, and it's the 80s. That's a lot of money. He's got the great hair, and Jonathan is literal trailer trash whose dad ran off. Okay. So he's going to feel insecure. But this is where this is where the scene, the goop scene to me is the worst scene because they had done enough in their arc to this point that they were at a point where they should have been able to move past all this. Just like after all they go through the slog, once the slog finally finishes, Faile's bored with Perrin. The only reason she makes things come to a head is because Perrin has forced her hand when it politically. Like I can't have my husband is in charge of this army and you have just ruined his credibility. So I have to do something to fix that. But she no longer cares about Perrin going after, Perrin personally because she's bored with it. I mean, I think she basically uses those words of, "Aren't you tired of this? You're boring me. I don't care." It's the meme from Mad Men, I pity you and I don't think about you at all. It's she has reached that point that okay, you should be able to move past this. And in the scene itself, I like paused it midway when I was rewatching it. So my wife has not watched this series. It's not her kind of show, so she wouldn't like it. She'd be covering her face through way too many of the, sci-fi monster things. But I showed her the scene and I gave her some context about the show starts in 83. This is 87. These two have been together for a couple of years. They've had their ups and downs. They've, been through all these terrible experiences, but come through it, blah, 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 blah. Now here's the scene. All right, where they've had all this tension, through this season, and now it has come to a head. Okay. And here were her thoughts on it. Just the scene itself in a vacuum is I'm trying to remember when I paused it. Uh okay, so I paused it like right before he takes the ring out, right before he takes out the cassette that's got the ring in it. And then I gave her some more context. No, I remember where I paused it. I paused it right before they talk about spring break, and Jonathan gets insecure and asks if you stayed behind because of Steve. All right. Because I wanted her to give her the context of Steve the Hare. Up until that moment, that scene is their body language is very open. Their voices are very soft. They aren't having a fight. They're having a discussion. They're airing things out. This is a forget the sci-fi, you know, points of the scene. Just put this in a typical romantic drama, and this is the tension has come to a head, and now this couple is having it out. This is a healthy thing. But then I gave her the context, and she went, ugh, because I phrased it as they think they're about to die.
Hmm.
So her point was, this is the couples therapy fallacy. That the reason couples therapy fails is because most people who go there, you're not going there to have a discussion. You're not going there to air things out. You're fighting. You're in a mindset of, I don't care about your feelings. I just want to vent, and I want to get all this off my chest. And so
It's couples therapy.
Exactly.
That's
That
why
was
it's
her point.
95% fail rate.
It
Yeah.
is that was it is she said this is the couples therapy fallacy, is they
Mhm.
didn't choose to have this conversation. And I thought, take away the sci-fi, oh, they're all about to die. Just the point is, something inevitably brings this kind of tension to a head. And then the couple, depending on where their headspace is at and where they're at as a couple, it can either destroy them or it can bring them together. And up until that point, it seems like, and her point was that really the whole scene hinges on, do they want to have this discussion? Do they need to have this discussion? Or are they just doing this because they think they're dying?
Hmm.
The way she phrased it was, you only have this discussion. Well, it's only a discussion as opposed to a fight where you're just venting and you don't care if you blow up the relationship. It's only a discussion if you're in a safe place, and not in the way the wokies use safe place of, I need to go in a closet with some crayons because my fifis got hurt. No, as in, you are comfortable and secure enough with this other person that you now feel like, I can say these things and it won't ruin our relationship. I might hurt your feelings, but it's not going to cause a blow up. It's not going to cause everything to dissolve. Yeah, I haven't said these things before because I've been so scared of hurting you, but more I've been scared of driving you away. If you are in a mindset where you can do that, then you have this discussion rather than this fight. And right up until he right up until he says the words of, will you not marry me, one of the reasons I hate this scene is because I thought he was actually going to propose. Because when he takes out the ring, when he takes out the cassette, but before he reveals to her, Nambo, that the ring is in there, is he says, I have screwed up so many things with you. I need to get one thing right. And I thought he was going to say something along the lines of, if this is the end, I I want to face it I'm at least happy we're facing it together, because one of the points in the conversation that Nancy makes is when she's laughing off Steve and basically telling him, dude, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. He wants 6 kids. And they both laugh about it, indicating they both think that's crazy.
Mhm.
So they're on the same page when it comes to one of the most critical things of a long-term relationship, of family, of what is family going to mean to you. So they're on the same page there. They're both laughing it off. And she says, but where it becomes a problem for her is, she says, Steve knows exactly what he wants. I don't. Well, that's not true. You know some of what you want. You're just not sure about all the other details. You're not sure how it's supposed to look. And the setup to get to this point is them airing out all these things of, I hate The Clash. I never read that book you like. I just read the Cliff Notes and pretended I like it. I can't stand it when you're high. I don't like it when you're drunk. They're airing all these things out and basically getting to the point where they realize, again, back to you could have done something quasi wokey, non traditional with their relationship of, look, it doesn't matter what our relationship is supposed to be. It doesn't matter what other people think about our relationship. What matters is us. How do we feel about each other? How do we feel about where each other individually and where we are together? So I don't know where all this is going. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I do know I want to do it with you. And then he has the stupid unproposal.
Yeah, and again, back to modern writers, the problem is us in the audience wanted the proposal, but the proposal would have meant traditional roles. And I mean, you can't have Nambo if the proposal happens. You can't have the guy, supporting her all the way, all along the way, and her be on the right end of what has been called the gratitude to entitlement curve. That's my problem with Nancy. She has very little gratitude, but she is very entitled. That's why I brought up personality disorders and narcissism. She hits 5 of the 8, at least. If you want me to go through the list and you just check them off and see if I'm right or not, I will if you want. But she hits 5 of the 8, which is what is required. And the writers probably do too.
That was one of my thoughts in the scene, is there's a very stark tonal dissonance here, because right up until the will you accept my non-proposal, I think the writers wanted to have their cake and eat it too, probably literally when you look at some of these people, because they wanted the touching, romantic, emotional scene. I mean, for crying out loud, after the stupid non-proposal, they still end with I love you too. But we can't have them, to your point, end up in the traditional. And you still could have had the non-traditional in that epilogue scene. You could have had you could have Steve make a crack about how, she's still Nancy Wheeler. She didn't take his last name. And, Jonathan, I don't care. You still could have done some things there and yet had them together because of all the things that they've been through. Is they talk about how we have this strong connection, but their concerns are, and I have a section here of red flags, because when I rewatched this, knowing how it ends up, I started to notice some red flags, especially with what we talked about last time with Nambo walking all over him and being the boss, and your point of the line you really hate of "never doubt me again" there at the end of season 3.
No, it was actually worse because he said it.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I'll never doubt you again. It was actually worse because it was him being a simp. Yeah.
There's a moment in there where I think it's when he says that he never applied to college, and anyway, he
no, he never applied to the college they were supposed to go to together.
Yeah. And I don't remember what she says, but he says, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she doesn't answer. Her response is, "Why didn't you?" And then he has this guilty look on his face. I'm like, hold on a second. You're both wrong here.
Yeah, you both didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to have one person right and one person wrong. Both people can be wrong, and sometimes both people can be right. Yeah.
And through most of that scene, it is, oh, we were both being wrong. We need to stop that. That's what the whole honesty, let's be honest with each other, is all about. You haven't been. That was wrong for both of you. The other red flags that jumped out at me is when Nambo uses the phrase shared trauma, that is a very modern thing, which is annoying. But the other reason it annoyed me is because she kind of laughs it off. But Jonathan makes the point that whatever it was, why ever it happened, we have been through this thing that connects us and will always connect us. No matter what happens for the rest of our lives, we will always be connected by these events. That's a big effing deal. Connection is what you're going for in a relationship. The other two things that were big red flags to me because they're such, you know, modernity. I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need no man, which is why in the epilogue I end up with a boy haircut and off in New York City being an independent journalist. I'm going to end up in my 50s living in a small apartment with 5 cats and nobody's going to love me and I'm going to be miserable. Nancy says that it was suffocating and that she needed space. Those are phrases that are excuses to get out of a relationship when you don't have a real reason. It is the dating equivalent of I'm just not happy anymore. Well, hold on a second. Again, you've been together for a couple of years, all the things you've been through, all the things you've overcome. It's not like this is the first time y'all have had tension. It's not like this is the first time y'all have had an argument. And yet all this time you have overcome it. And now you can't?
Okay, so this actually brings something up I came across recently, even though it was last year's article. BBC actually had a good article. Happiness. 8 ways to stay happier this year. We'll go through them real quick, just the headlines of them. We won't go into detail. Embrace friendship as we age. That sounds good, right? And actually, from my aging class, that actually was a heavy predictor of longevity. Okay, so practice co-felicity, which is compassion, is a well-known foundation of true friendship. So the key word here is co, right? Do some volunteering. That's not a bad idea. We could use more of that, right? I actually took this to heart because I'm gonna find ways to do it, even though we're both busy with our business ventures and stuff.
Helping others, as we said,
Yeah.
this is why Steve the Hare becomes a favorite character.
Connect with your ancestors. Okay, that sounds good. Ancestry.com. If you want, if you're not shy about sharing your DNA, right? You can do that, or just talk to your to the elders of your family, right? Write a list. Look forward to fun activities. Oh, amazing. Look forward to fun activities. How that can make you happier. I mean, there's nothing groundbreaking here, but people need to be reminded because we live in a different world now. Do nothing. Sometimes it's okay. Don't be that person that when you take an afternoon off, that you're thinking about all the things you didn't do.
Yeah.
Right. Don't drink too much caffeine. I've actually gotten better about this. I only drink 1 cup of coffee on my days off and 2 on my days on. And actually, I've gone many days without it, and it wasn't horrible. Little crash in the afternoon, but I'm getting better at it. And that was the last one. Okay,
Scroll up. There was an and something there.
Oh, and bonus from our newsletter, what I learned from 6 steps to
never mind.
Yeah, so it's a different thing. Yeah. So those are all good things. And guess what the theme there is, other than the caffeine one? Not being narcissistic. But what do you see on Instagram and Facebook and all of these things? Self-care, self-love, self. It's leading to misery. The keys to happiness is actually human connection. And even if you do something with yourself, like start a business or work out or all of these other things that you can do for yourself, they lead to more success with the other things. If you work out, you're going to be more attractive. You're more likely to if you're single, have a connection with somebody else on the initial attraction. If you build a business and you make a lot of money, if you do it right, you've made a lot of money for other people too. And you have more freedom to do things like the volunteering. You have more income to have a great relationship and have children and all of these. It's actually removing the self that leads to long-term happiness. To some degree, you have to have some cognition of yourself, but yourself as it fits into relationships. When we talk about narcissism, you're trying to fit everything into you. And that's, I mean, we call it a personality disorder because not only does it lead to bad social interactions,
Mhm.
it harms you as the individual as well. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm so OCD because I have to be so organized and da da da." I'm like, that's not OCD. One of the requirements to have OCD is that behavior causes mental harm to you and distress to you. That's in the criteria. If you are very highly organized, that's not causing distress to you. That's actually making your life better. If you do it in such a way that it causes distress to you, now you're OCD because you can't leave the house without washing your hands 5 times and jiggling the doorknob 8 times to make sure. My one little OCD moment is I always check the door like 5 times before I leave. You've seen me walk halfway
Mhm.
to the truck and then walk back and check the door. I don't know where I have this tick with doors, but I think I left the door open once to the gym and it's been that way ever since. But other than that, that's the one thing. So I'm not OCD in general. I just have this one little thing, so it's not a diagnosis, right? Uh, yeah, everybody wants to say, "Oh, I'm this, blah, blah, blah." But no, it has to cause mental distress, which is my point about the narcissism. Is it has to be in such a way that it affects how you interact with people. And when we talk about Nancy, yeah, she's very entitled. The you suffocate me just by being around when he was just a puppy dog the whole time.
Mhm.
They fought one time in that whole thing. And as we talked about in the last episode, he was mostly right
Yep.
in that fight because she ruined his in normal circumstances where there wasn't demigorgons and L and all of these other things, she could have ruined his life.
Yeah, like he said in that scene, which was so, I mean, you can't get around this because it's so objectively true. You wanted that job. I needed that job.
And so here's the thing about privilege. I like to make this analogy, and as far as I've heard, I've never heard this way of explaining it, but when you come from a not privileged background, and I'm talking wealth, people talk about privilege. Privilege is wealth.
Mhm.
It's like walking on a street, and you've got to get from one side to the other. And they do the what they do in the Kamala Harris thing. The rope was lower for one guy than the other. You started ahead. No, it's more like the width of the road. If I stumble and I have no privilege, I fall off the road. If I stumble and I have a wide road, I can get back on track
Mhm.
because there's this safety net covering me. It's more of a safety net than anything else. And the more privileged you are, the more you can stumble. And he was from a background that one stumble is the end. And she was not. That's what he was explaining to her. He's like, you can F up over and over and over and over again, and you're gonna be okay. I F up once and I'm working in a coal mine. Okay. That's the difference. Or I'm joining the military. What is the military full of? Young boys, mostly boys, that had no options. That's what the military is full of.
You perfectly set up my last point from my notes here, um, with your little monologue there. So I love that because the last point my wife made on this, as we were wrapping it up, and any other thoughts on this, is she made the point that what it sounds like, especially Nancy, is saying, but even Jonathan, since he goes along with it and he's the one who does the stupid unproposal to begin with, is this very modern mindset of you have to quote unquote find yourself before you can find love. And I've always hated that expression because finding yourself in modern terms is so incredibly self-centered.
Hmm.
As you put it, like the article you brought up, we talked about Sexton, the divorce lawyer,
That's who I
last
listened
time or the
to
time
before
before,
this to get in the right
and
mindset. Yeah.
and a lot of the things he talks about of you know relationships that work versus ones that don't. It's really, when you boil it down, it's the relationships that work are because both sides know it's not all about me. Yes, I'm still important. Yes, I still need to be happy. Yes, I still need to be fulfilled. But I have these other people. I have this other person, and then sometimes these tiny humans who need lots of attention. It's not all about me. And ultimately being not all about you makes you more fulfilled. However, when she said that, it dawned on me, here's the real reason that's stupid. It's like my rant about, well, we'll get married when we're ready. We'll have kids when we're ready. You're never ready. It's always going to be difficult. It's always going to be complicated. You're always going to run into problems. Okay? That's just life. You never stop finding yourself. That is a process you do not win the game of life. It just keeps going until the end.
It's like
the definitive end,
right? Yeah, everybody wants an RPG, right? It's like Pac-Man. It just gets harder and harder and harder till you die.
Yeah, it just keeps going. You got to keep munching the things.
Well, I have a video queued up that describes this from a male perspective.
This adds to the tonal dissonance of the scene too, because in the lead up to the unproposal, they had found themselves. They were finally being honest, not just with each other, but with themselves. And when he takes out the ring, Jonathan says that he thought this would make it better, but it just would have made things worse. And in rewatching it, that really annoyed me because he was right, but then he was wrong. Because he was right that had he just proposed without that release of that tension, it would have just made things worse. They needed to air things out. They needed to figure out where they were. They needed to be honest with each other. But now that they have, it will make things better because they're ready to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the key here was, had he proposed, he knows the situation. He knows her personality. He knows everything. He would have been willing to make the sacrifice. And this is key to this scene because this is the impression I get, and you can rebut me here in a second. When he bought the ring and he was doing all these things, he knew all this ahead of time. He knew everything about her because we don't get much character development on her part since he bought the ring versus when he did the unproposal. He knew all of that, and he was willing to make that sacrifice to be the background guy, to be the supporting role. That was his character. That's what he did. He was a supporting role to his little brother. If you really look at the whole series, right? Because everything was about Will. Everything was about Will in that family. So he is the Samwise Gamgee. He's the gardener that carries Frodo, right? He won't carry the ring, but he'll carry the guy carrying the ring. That's his role, and that's fine. There is a place in this world for those people, and we love them. That's what I do for a living. I'm a coach. Will I ever be as famous as any of my athletes? No. But I make them better. That's what I do for a living. And that's his role, and he was accepting that. She never was willing to make a sacrifice for him, and he realized that. Like you said, suffocating, just being in a relationship. Well, that's a sacrifice we all make with relationships because it ceases to be me. It becomes us, right? And she was not willing to make that sacrifice. And realistically, that conversation to me was his realization that was always going to be the case. I'm not the supporting role. I'm actually nobody.
You're right in the meta, but it's a point the writers accidentally made because they made Nancy such a queen bee, strong female character.
Yeah, I think they just got in their own way. They couldn't help themselves. Yes. They had such a good thing going. That's why I say a really good show, because I leave room for it could have been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we played the opening clip of it of Hillary Lane on her channel Second Story, her latest video on strong female characters and why they're so terrible, because they're not female. They're just, you know, toxic men in a female skin suit is basically how she phrases it.
Hmm.
So go watch that whole video because she really nails Nancy without ever bringing her up.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, the key word I was using earlier, and you just supported it a little bit more. When we talk about virtue, the word virtue, virtuosity, people do good things all the time. Uh, but have you, we live in a day and age where people will go to the homeless shelter to feed, but they have their phone in their face the whole time advertising it, right? It's self grandiosity instead of actual sacrifice a lot of the time. And we're seeing that in the modern writing, and she's not willing to sacrifice those things about her that would make an us. And what we saw in that BBC article is actually virtuosity leads to true happiness. But virtuosity requires some sacrifice, you know? And when we talk about relationships, I need to be the perfect me before I can be an us. Well, no, because sometimes people bring out the best in us. If I go volunteer and I'm helping, you brought up Sexton earlier. He talks about the most gratifying thing in his entire life isn't his multi-million dollar law career, isn't the books he wrote about relationships based on his observations from being a divorce lawyer. It's his work doing volunteer work for hospice because that brought a lot of meaning to his life in this hustle and bustle world of just trying to make money. He volunteered for free to just read books to people that are dying, to help keep them clean so they can be comfortable along the way. Those kind of things were the things that actually kept him going in that rat race that's the other part of his life. And if you don't have that underlying thing that you sacrifice for other people, you're going to always be a little bit unhappy. You're always going to be you're living that entitled life, and that's why they write books about what do you regret from your life. Oh, I never did XYZ, which is always a form of connection, whether it's connection to nature, connection to other people, all of that stuff. So this is one of the things when we talk masculine versus feminine thinking. And I'm going to bring up a video here, and I need to find the movie that goes with this, which I heard is like a Russian movie, so I'll probably have to get it dubbed. Should I share with sound? It's got a song in the background, but I think it's one you can automatically put on your videos in Instagram.
I would say no, because everything I've heard is that songs are what get you real fast in YouTube. I don't
Okay,
know
so I'm
why.
not going to share this with sound. It's the like a prayer, but it's done with a choir.
Hmm.
Uh, this is, from what I've read, is a Russian movie, which might get us banned. I don't know, just because it's from Russia.
Yeah,
But
who knows?
yeah, to narrate it on top of the video, it says, "Girls, I hope to go peacefully in my sleep, surrounded by loved ones. Guys with no hesitation." And I'll narrate it as we go. We got a helicopter surrounded by fire, and they're trying to dump weight on this helicopter. And they're emptying some of the fuel tanks, and the guy is telling all the kids to take their shoes off.
Yeah, and it's a what do we do? Toss the kids out or lose some fuel?
Hmm. Yep. And he tells the kids to cover their eyes, count to three, and at the count of three, all of a sudden the helicopter starts going up.
Yeah,
We're climbing, we're climbing. The kids were climbing, the pilot says, and they look out the window, and the guy had jumped out.
yeah. I've seen a number of similar such memes or clips or whatnot, and that's a good one. Because
Yeah,
yeah, women and children first.
women and children first. But the key to that is when The key to that is self-sacrifice, right? And that's the ultimate. That's why more men join the military than women. That's why, protect and provide are the two big masculine traits, which I do like Galloway's take on it. Protect, provide, procreate. But I think procreate is wrapped into the first two. You need the first two before you can legitimately That's what the biggest when we dump on males. One of the biggest problems with modern society is there's a lot of procreation without the protect and provide.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
that I mean, that's probably the main problem with
You're not a
society right
father,
now.
you're a sperm donor.
Yeah, yeah. And that's all of our fault.
Yep.
That's all of our fault. So that's the women that choose the men, that's the men that are doing it. That's everybody's fault. So yeah, that but if we have that notion of self-sacrifice, and that's not just your life. That's, you know what? I want to have a child. Guess what? I'm not going to do well for 9 months. My job. That's why we have maternity leave, right? So, but that maternity leave sets you back in your career. We know that the data shows that you have a 9 month gap or however long with the childbearing, and we'll call it a year. We have a year gap of not progressing your career. But there's also sacrifices that other people make. So it's trade-offs. It's basic economics. It's Thomas Sowell. There are no solutions, only trade-offs.
So I said last time that we were going to compare Perrin and Faile, but then I realized with the way things ended, at the
Yeah.
sadly the better
Okay.
comparison
Let me
with Jonathan and Nambo
yeah, let
is
me let
something
me
else.
close out Perrin and Faile with Jonathan and Nancy,
Yeah.
and then you bring in the part I know you're bringing in. So the difference between Perrin and Faile and Jonathan and Nancy is Faile has gratitude for the things that Perrin does. She has admiration for the man,
Mm.
and she understands that he's going to be different in some ways, and she adjusts accordingly. And he stumbles around a lot, but he loves her so much that he's willing to make the sacrifices for her as well. So she sacrificed a lot just marrying him because he was a commoner, realistically.
Hmm.
Now she helped make him into a lord. She saw that potential in him, but he was a blacksmith. And she admired that while she was sitting there in your favorite scene in The Dragon Reborn while he's doing the blacksmithing and she's sitting there watching him. But she saw that skill and that dedication and said, this guy's going to be something. And she sacrificed a lot on that potential in him. Nancy's not willing to sacrifice anything. So
And,
she becomes that relationship you're about to bring up.
and sacrificed a lot to and then dedicated herself to helping him
Hmm.
realize that potential. Um,
Which we see in modern relationships a lot. And this is where the script has been flipped. You see a lot now of the male saying, I support you in whatever you do. I'm already making money. Hey, you go do that. I'm going to bring up this might hit a nerve with something. Who's the target audience of multi-level marketing schemes? Bored housewives.
yeah.
Bored housewives that are searching for purpose.
Mm.
They are the easiest to wrap into those little schemes that are what we call multi-level market. The old Amway, remember the old Amway? But now it's all these vitamin companies that come up, Herbalife, ID Life. They all end with life, I think. It seems like, but no, that's the target audience. You go to one of these meetings, Mary Kay. Mary Kay is a great example, right? Which obviously that's targeting females because it's makeup, but at the same time, it's successful because that's an easy audience. You're looking for somebody that's looking for purpose, especially if they're empty nesting, right? That is the target audience, and if you want to make a lot of money in that industry, that's who you go after. And what you see in that situation is, I support you every step of the way from the husband. You're going to lose money for a while. I know, probably forever. But here you go. Here you go. Yes, okay, you can have meetings at the house. Okay, here you go. You can go on that business trip that was provided by the company, but for some reason we ended up paying $3,000 for, that kind of stuff. You see that support coming in, but when we have women that become the breadwinners, and this is why probably the divorce rate is higher when the woman is a breadwinner, you don't see that flow the other direction.
Purpose, but then also purpose for myself. That is all about myself. So ultimately, where Jonathan and Nancy fall apart is why they're not Perrin and Faile, they're Egwene and Gawyn.
Yes.
Because
Oh, it hurts so bad that you brought that up.
they both talk a lot about compatibility and about working together and working things out and we'll make this work, we'll sacrifice for each other, blah blah, but they never actually do it. Look at, I kind of ranted on this because this was such a great character moment for Gareth Brine when Gawyn shows up and beats up his guards. And he's like, "What are you doing? So what? You're just going to be, a bully?" And he's like, "Well, they were in my way. So it's all about you." And Brine is trying to get him to understand that you need to dedicate yourself to something bigger. Ultimately, I don't remember where it is where Gawyn basically admits the reason he hates Rand is because it should have been him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wants to be the hero. As much as he talks about, yeah, I can stand in Egwene's shadow, he's never able to actually do it. Look at his end. Yeah, there are reasons why he thinks I should be the one to go out and get Demandred. But ultimately, they're very thin rationalizations for the fact that he wants to be the one to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, in essence, he was a mirror image of Demandred.
mm-hmm. I don't think we said that at the time, but yeah, that's a good freaking point. Is he is the good guy version. He is the naive version. He's who you think Demandred may have been at the very beginning back in the Age of Legends and why he turned dark. I think you could probably see young
That
Demandred
character
as
arc,
Gawyn.
yeah, yeah.
And and even in their fight, Gawyn's still not in the real world. Remember, he says he complains that Demandred's cheating. And Demandred says, "What, are we playing a game?" No, son. No. So he's not even in the real world yet when he goes after. And Gawyn knows full well what his death would mean to Egwene, but he's not thinking about that. That is not holding him back at all
Mm-hmm.
because he's trying to be the hero. Because in the end, he is still narcissistic. You brought up the term, and remember, we've mentioned before, Peterson talks about this ad nauseum. The reason narcissism is so bad is because it feigns competence.
Mm-hmm.
That is Gawyn to a T. Yes, he is one of the best swordsmen in the world. So he has plenty of competence there, but in all the other areas that really matter, he doesn't. That's what Brine was trying to teach him there is, yeah, you're a great swordsman. So what? What about all these other things that matter when it comes to leadership, when it comes to masculinity, when it comes to doing the right thing? He's lost.
Which is funny because just this moment, I was a big fan of our It Should Have Been Abel that did it, but now I'm thinking about it is it really should have been Gallad. It really he should have held that fight off a little bit longer into the book. And I know he wanted his cool moment with Lan because
Mm-hmm.
the fan favorite and everything, but it
Mm-hmm.
should have been Gallad because Gallad would have crossed or checked all the boxes you just mentioned. Because better swordsman, he's probably the best in the world, and learning lessons from previous failures because he's virtuous in his action, first of all, but learning lessons from previous failures. Who supplies Galad with the medallion? Matt, the farmer with the quarterstaff that beat him
Mm, mhm.
11 books previous to that last one. So he would have been taking a lesson from the farmer to beat the big baddie and still have the competence to back up everything else around it.
And
And
it's
that
not
would have been
about him.
great. Yeah.
It's about avenging his one brother who has just been killed and protecting the brother he just learned he found just found out he has in Rant.
Which ultimately ends up being doing the right thing, which is what Galad is all about.
Yeah.
And so that the more I think on that, we could have had that able twist to it with
Hmm.
it being Galad,
Hmm.
because you would have had lessons learned, you would have had virtuosity, you would have had self-sacrifice. Even if Galad died doing it, that would have been okay.
L- Look at why we love Steve the Hare, and
Hmm.
look at where he ends up. In the epilogue, he is a teacher and a coach. Why? Because it's not about him. Because he learned through the arc of the show that he gets the most fulfillment with helping these kids. It's all about them.
Well, and we get that
And
moment where he wants to be a father.
yes.
Yes.
And the show kind of laughs at him about it. But I love that you could interpret that, and with all the other things that goes on, you probably should interpret that as the writers mocking Steve. But in the
Well,
end,
especially the way they did it, because that was
yes,
part of Nancy's boss
yes,
girl moment is,
mhm,
well, you can't saddle me down with that.
exactly. And yet, who seems to be living his best life, as the kids would say? It's the guy that wants to help the kids. It's the guy that wants to dedicate himself to others.
Well, and just do a quick search on Google, Steve the Hare Harrington, and you get so much positive
Mhm.
feedback from the world on how he's one of the most popular characters. Everybody loves Steve after season one. When he becomes the babysitter, everybody loves him.
Yep.
And there's reasons for that. There's evolutionary reasons for that, because he embodies something they're trying to make fun of.
Yeah.
It was a cell phone. It was a
It
cell
really
phone.
was. It
Yeah.
really was. Um, so final thought, I think I've shared this before, but I'm going to share it again because it fits so perfectly here, is that um, there is a quote: humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less. And it's often misattributed to C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis didn't say it. It comes from Rick Warren's book, A Purpose-Driven Life. Here is what C.S. Lewis actually said, and it's much more profound because, back in the day, people were smarter. This is a direct quote from, I believe this is from Mere Christianity. Let me check. Yep, Mere Christianity. Do not imagine that if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He wrote this a really long time ago, and we never learned, and it's not gotten any better. But back to the quote. He will not be a sort of greasy, smarmy person who is always telling you that, of course, he is nobody. Probably all you will think about him is that he seemed a cheerful, intelligent chap who took a real interest in what you said to him. If you do dislike him, it will be because you feel a little envious of anyone who seems to enjoy life so easily. Who's enjoying life at the end of the series? Who's enjoying life of when the older kids are there on top of the radio station talking about their lives? Who really seems like they're enjoying life the most? There's one clear answer, and it's the one who has dedicated himself to others. Back to the quote. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all. If anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud, and a biggish step too. At least nothing whatever can be done before it. If you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. And again, that is C.S. Lewis from Mere Christianity, which is a fantastic book, um, and very very readable. Unlike Tolkien, who was very erudite in the way he wrote. C.S. Lewis is very approachable, very colloquial, almost even when he is being so insightful. And that to me perfectly sums up these relationships we're talking about and the ones that work and the ones that didn't. And, you know, in real life, here's why.
Yeah, go ahead and close your thoughts, and I'll have my closing thoughts.
So I don't remember what made me think of this analogy, but it's it's very annoying. Anyone who has ever been told this, but then you live long enough and eventually you end up being the one who says it because you realize there's no other way to really phrase it. But when you're young, you may ask an older friend or brother or your father or someone like that, "Hey, dad, what does it feel like to be in love?" And very often you're just told, "You know it when you know it." You just know.
I got a
So
whole book
often
about
the
it right
answer.
there.
Yeah, you just know.
Yeah.
And it's very annoying, but it's very true. And I thought of
Lots
an
of chemicals
analogy.
going on.
Yeah. And then one day you're going to be the one saying you just know and go, yeah, God, man, I was so annoyed when I heard that. But it's hard to describe. You know, you can talk all around it, but it's hard to describe. And I thought of a visual analogy. So if you're just listening, I'll try and describe what I'm doing here. But if you've ever wrestled or grappled, and especially if you've ever coached young kids doing it, when you clench your hands together in a grip, whether it's a bear hug or single leg or
The old
whatever.
Gable grip.
Hold on. Don't spoil it.
Nope,
You're
sorry.
ruining it.
I'm ruining. Okay.
Most often, what people will do reflexively is this. They will,
Or this.
yes, they will grip their fingers together, either curling their fingers together or entwining their fingers together like they're holding their own hands. Okay. The problem with this is it seems like this is nice and together, but it's not, because you just start to pull your hands apart very briefly, and this is the natural way the fingers move. So the fingers are going to want to naturally just open up and pull apart. But you clasp your hands together, you curl your fingers over the top of your hand, and you interlock your thumbs, and now all of a sudden they're reinforcing each other. And it seems a little counterintuitive to most people most of the time, because this is not a normal grip. This isn't how we shake hands. This isn't how we hold hands. Usually, if we're picking something big up, this isn't how we grip.
Yeah, and just a little. If you're just listening to this, just Google Gable grip,
Yes.
and you'll see what we're talking about. Yeah.
And when you look at it, it seems counterintuitive because that's not a normal grip. And yet, just do it. If you've never done it, Google Gable grip and then put your hands together like this. And once you've done it, you go, oh, that makes perfect sense. That feels so much better. That feels so much stronger. When you're in a real relationship, that's what happens. Is you're reinforcing each other, you're supporting each other, and it just feels right, even though initially it was counterintuitive.
And for those that can't see, I am going back and forth between right and left. It's also adaptable to the situation. So if you've got to move right, I mean, if you're watching, look how easy that is to just go back and forth. Anybody who's done a pummel drill will know what we're talking about here. And anybody who's done, my favorite position was actually half guard. If I was on top and someone had me in half guard, they're like, "Oh, he's got control." I'm like, "No, I've got so much control." Just get that sternum crunch. If you've never been in a sternum crunch, you know what I'm talking about. It leads to so much, and then you hit that hammer lock right after. It's so beautiful. But okay, so yeah, so adaptability. Not only is it a very solid grip on life, but it is adaptable to the situation where you got to go right, left, in
Yeah, that's a good
between.
point.
And so yeah, that was a great analogy you brought up, which leads me to my closing thoughts, which is balance. So to kind of rebut what you just brought up with the not thinking of the self at all, I'm going to invoke the when you're on a plane and the masks drop, put your own
Mm,
on first. So there has to be some self-care that goes with this. But you have to balance that with what is pro-social in the situation, which we're talking relationships. And Faile and Perrin took care of the Perrin actually was worse at this. He didn't take care of himself in order to make them better a lot of the time.
yeah, that's true.
But why we kind of fell in love with Faile in the long term as adults, it was she did a lot of self-care with the ultimate goal being better for him. And that is it. Yeah, when you're talking selfishness versus sharpening your axe. Do you cut more wood if you keep your axe sharp? So you do have to spend some time. So there is a balance to this. But what we have to also understand is listen to your partners.
Mm.
If there's a thing called, we're going to invoke narcissism again, trauma bond. Have you ever heard of trauma bond?
Yeah, I've heard the term.
What people think that that term invokes is you bonded over a trauma, but that's not what it is.
Mm,
What it is someone comes in and I'll use the term from narcissism, so I'll do the extreme version. They love bomb you,
mm,
and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing in my entire life. They love me so much. But then in the normal times, they neglect you, or they do things that make you suspicious, or they do things that hurt you, or they're even abusive during that time. And as soon as you start pulling away, they love bomb you again. So basically, you're in a state of trauma with the relationship, but they keep you bonded because, oh, they do really love me as soon as that love bomb comes in. And then they go back to their behaviors again, their selfish behaviors or whatever, selfish, abusive, fill in the blank there, behaviors. And you start to lose the relationship again. And then they come in at the 11th hour and say, oh, I love you so much. And they do all these things. And you're like, oh, they do love me so much. We have to have a balance. And what happens in the trauma bond situation is you basically torture somebody over a long period of time by throwing them a breadcrumb every once in a while.
mm.
And that happened with Nancy and Jonathan. And the good thing about that scene was, to me, was he finally realized it, that it was going to be the breadcrumb every once in a while, which was probably sex. They showed it's modern writing. They showed them getting out of bed together, multiple
The
times.
opening of season 3.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, he finally realized that. So that's the silver lining to it. But at the same time, that doesn't make her look good at all. And I think it was a cell
Yeah.
phone by the writers.
Especially in the epilogue where it still seems to me pretty obvious that he still cares for her deeply and still thinks, more importantly and worse, that she's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, and what we get with Perrin and Faile is, yeah, they had their moments where they were fighting. But as far as the relationship as a whole goes, they were in that constant dance of supporting each other.
Yeah.
And where we have with Egwene and Gawyn, which makes the ending of to the Stranger Things more applicable, was there was never a dance.
Yeah.
It was let me just ride this mule.
That's a good point because for her, and you even kind of see this in Lord of Chaos when they meet in Karheen and Canoodle, is from her point of view, it's kind of similar to what Rand was thinking when he first met Elaine, but he kind of gets over it and grows of, oh, this is like one of the stories from my dad's library, and it is the innkeeper's daughter and the prince. And then for him, it's he's still trying to be the hero. I am the, the prince and the sword master, and I'm going to, lead the light to victory over dark. And neither one of them are really thinking about the other that much. It's still all about me and what I have to do and what I want to do. And ultimately, they both end tragically.
Hmm.
Collectively and individually, they both end tragically.
Yeah, which was one of the disappointments with Stranger Things is that could have been a tragic ending. We could have had a Romeo and Juliet moment there, and he could have actually proposed to her and them both die.
Hmm.
That would have been, I mean, this was proposed the last season. That would have been something that you're like, holy, the internet would have blown up
Hmm.
if that is what happened. But no, you had them having that moment. He unproposes, and then you have a moment a little bit later where he's like, "Shouldn't I have a gun?" And she hands him a flare.
I mean,
And she's like, "No, I get the machine gun."
you want the emotion and the drama. I had a couple of alternative endings in my head of and tell me what you think of these is, instead of having the obnoxious modernity, strong independent woman don't need no man, what if she just pockets the ring and says maybe when the world isn't ending, especially after she throws it and they realize, oh, we're not going to die. She pockets the ring and says, maybe when the world isn't ending, we can figure this out together. And then
Hmm.
you could have just left it ambiguous at the end. I would have been fine with that. Of they're looking at each other and you're like, what's going on there? When they're sitting on the top of the radio station, or I brought up the Will's coming out scene, which should have been so much more than just Will coming out. That could have been their moment in that scene of, you know what? Yeah, we have been hiding this. We have been, running away from our feelings, and I'm going to marry this dummy, you know, and that could have been their moment in that scene. But I like your idea better of holy crap, what if Steve and Henderson come in and they find them instead of in the grotesque way they found those soldiers when they were going through the station, they find them in the goop, frozen, embraced, the ring on her finger.
Hmm.
Wow. You
Yeah.
would have blown up the internet, and yeah, it would have been, I can't believe they
I just
killed
got
those two
chills
main
up my
characters.
neck with
But
that. Yeah.
what an ending.
Hmm.
As you say, there's a reason Romeo and Juliet is a classic and has been adapted, remade, influenced other things for centuries because it's a heck of a story.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually, it sounds negative, but that's a positive way to end this
But
one is, yeah.
but you actually have to care about the story and the characters, not preaching a message,
Hmm.
which is why
Or
the,
just
the,
being arrogant. I mean, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they weren't being activists. Maybe they just thought they could do it better. They didn't have to invoke classics.
yeah, maybe.
Maybe they just thought they could do it better.
I mean, that's basically what the writers of The Witcher said is, yeah, this thing that has basically become a quarter of Poland's entire GDP. I'm exaggerating, but yeah, this thing that is so huge around the world, but we can do it better, even though no one's ever heard of us. Same thing
Hmm.
with Rings of Power. The writers of Rings of Power. Yeah, Tolkien is sold more
Wheel
than
of
any other
Time.
book except the Bible. Yeah, Wheel of Time. Yeah, this
There
this
there is
this is
there is
huge, but we can do it better.
when we look at an adaptation, we talk about okay, you have to change things for film, like they did with Lord of the Rings, but it's like a 75-25 split.
Mhm.
When we're invoking Rings of Power versus Wheel of Time versus Witcher adaptation versus I mean Stranger Things was it from books?
Mm-mm. No, it
No.
was just heavily influenced from 80s stuff in general.
Yeah, okay, so the first three I named, they're like 25-75.
Mhm.
Where it's like, okay, we're going to do enough that people can kind of recognize it. We're going to put white hair on Geralt. Okay, it's Geralt, really, it is. Believe me, it is. But he's nothing like him. And just making him say with everything is not Geralt. In fact, that last season, he did that every dialogue. And I was like, God, dog it, that's not how it's done. But it's again, they think they can do it better than the original source material. And these modern writers, again, there wasn't original source material for the exact show, but there's source material on what people desire.
There's a template to follow.
There's a template to follow. And it's not just Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare was an intuitive person. He didn't write Romeo and Juliet because he just came up with something on his own out of nowhere. He wrote it on unrequited desire. He wrote it on how culture can affect your personal life. He wrote it on how society can be against you, on how your families can get in the way of real requited love. And that's what he was writing on, and that's a struggle people had during that time. He wasn't making things up. He was just in tune with what we desire as human beings
Yeah.
and the things that get in the way of that, how culture can conflict with our biology. It was is how really it is, because these two people were in love with each other, like you said. What brought it on? The right situation, the right attraction, the right moment, the right hormonal state. All of those things brought it on, but families got in the way. That's something we all struggle with.
Mm.
Society got in the way. That's something we also, we'll go back when we talk systemic racism. Let's go back to the 60s. You're a white dude and you come into that hormonal state with a black woman. What would have happened? Everything would have happened. Your family would have been against you. Her
Mm.
family would have been against it. Uh,
Depending on where you lived, the law would have been against
the
it.
law would have been against it. Yeah. And we went through those struggles as a society. And if you want to write a movie or a book about that, by all means do it, because I would watch it.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, go consume good stories.
Few and far between.
And if you have some that are maybe a little more niche that you think other people haven't heard of, hey, this is a really good story, go check it out, then let us know, and we will check it out.
We will check it out and we will do our thing on here. What are we talking about next time? We got
I have no
episode.
idea. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Okay, so we're not teasing anything this time, but we'll be back in the middle of the week.